Hey guys, welcome back. Another video, another topic. Um, this topic has maybe not been touched too much in the past, and I just want to spend some time talk about it so you guys are aware of what's out there and what you look for. And if you come across a good deal and you want to buy it, just be aware of a few things, okay? It's not any dramatic things, but there are things you should at least be aware of. So if they show up, you can address them. Um, I'm probably going to call this video something about the well-known issues or models with no known issues. And there's not many issues on the pro audio side. There's a few, but not even close to being mentioned. However, there's a few issues with some few models on the hi-fi side and the car audio side. I am not going to talk about all the shitty issues and problems that are associated with the CLS, the CLSC, the XLS, the SL, the VE. Those models are not even, though that time period of Cerwin-Vega do not exist for me. So I'm going to strictly talk about the old school and some of the issues some of the models had. And this is models that you probably didn't expect it would be on, but there is. So let's start with the car audio. And what we know was an issue with a few models on their woofers and subwoofers. So let's start with the Stroker series. Stroker 18 and Stroker 15 rarely had any issues. If it was user issues. But the 12-inch Stroker, I felt had a problem. It had this clacking sound, and it was very sensitive to box build and design and size. And if you didn't get the box almost on spot on specs, you could hear this clacking sound. And we tried several times to kind of like troubleshoot it to get down to what it came from. And we think it was some kind of a mechanical noise from the voice coil in the voice coil gap. We also, that kind of like, it planted itself into the cone. It's a very weird noise, but you will hear it when you hear it. You heard it very well when they were in hatchbacks, because you don't that you don't have a seat and a back window area that covers up, so you have it in the trunk if you have a regular sedan. But in hatchbacks, you can hear it very, very, very well. And we had a customer at one point that had a 12, and he had his box sitting in the back seat just because he was trying to get his build done in the trunk. But he came to us and he said, "What is this?" And we listened to it, and it was there. It was very loud. It was very prominent. What we also saw with the 12-inch Stroker, at least that's my experience. I don't know what other stores, service centers, and dealers had, but we had more repairs and recons on 12s that we had on 15 and 18. Some of it can be that the 12 and the 12 took less power, but very often it didn't. We even tried adjusting the spider, and that didn't help. We couldn't figure out where it came from. I know that we reconed a few of these 12s, and the problem was still there. So I think it was a design problem that maybe wasn't like a dead serious problem. It wouldn't maybe ruin yours woofer, but it had this annoying sound. So that was a Stroker 12, and then there has been Stroker 12s, but I haven't heard it on. So maybe it was like, okay, in those instances, maybe it is the box. Maybe it's just so freaking sensitive to the box that if you don't get it spot on within a certain plus minus whatever, you will get this noise. So just be aware of those issues. If you get it, you will probably think, what the fuck is wrong with this? So before you run out and buy yourself a recon kit, that might not take away the problem. Try and look what Cerwin-Vega says on recommended box size and type, and try and build it down to specs for that. And maybe you can try and change the tuning of the box. Sometimes that might fix the problem, because a lot of the boxes that I saw in my time as a dealer, distributor, and service center, there was many different sizes of boxes. There was many different type of tunings, and I couldn't hear that clacking sound or that popping sound on everyone. So try and see if it's just because it's so freaking sensitive to the box. Now to another one in car audio, and this was a design flaw, and that was the Vega series. This was a spider. The spider was not made correctly according to the X mass, or the movement of the cone, the travel distance of the cone. The spider was way too tight, way too stiff, and it tore. They had an issue, and Cerwin-Vega even admitted that this was a problem on it. And 8 and 10 inch, or at least a 10 inch, I didn't have much experience with the 8. The 10 inch was okay. Didn't have much issues with that. Sometimes it was, but not much. However, the 12 and the 15 had ripped spiders en masse. The Cerwin-Vega tried not later. Well, it was later, but it was like they kind of figured this out very soon. So they tried to make spiders that was aftermarket spiders, that replacement spiders. I know that a lot of the dealers and the distributors got sent recon kits, because there was a lot of recons on warranty for the Vega. There was a huge problem, and especially the 12 and the 15, where people started pushing these subwoofers to an extreme. You know, they had a 4 and 500 watt rating, so people are pushing 4 and 5 and 6 and 700 watt on them. And of course, you're gonna get some movement on those subs. So I know that I talked to a lot of people that was involved in Cerwin-Vega at that time, and they told me that the internal discussions had gone to, like, we can't do this, we can't do that, but they still did it. I don't know what they were doing. Maybe they were hoping that nothing would happen. I don't know. But this was one of the things that started the issues for Cerwin-Vega, and maybe was a part of the creation of the downfall of the company that had to be sold later on, because this was such a huge issue. So just if you come across one of these, the Vega 12 and the 15, first of all, you should be very careful about buying them. I don't think I would buy them now. Not for use. Maybe for have it on a shelf just to show it off. What was one history of Cerwin-Vega. But to buy a Vega 12 or 15 to use it in a car now, I'll be careful, because there's no recon kits for them, for the first of it. At least the XL you can get recon kits for, but the Vega, no way. You don't get a, because if you buy one used now, you don't know, for the first of it, has it been repaired? Has it gotten the aftermarket spider or the recon kit that was sent out to make it better? You don't know. And if something goes wrong, good luck, you can't get it repaired. Unless you do very, very weird modifications, and then it's not a Vega anymore. And if you come across someone that's selling these brand new in boxes, never been used, still in plastic, you have to be aware of that this is going to be a problem. And if you start using this, and after almost 30 years of sitting in a box, you know it's going to probably have some sag. It's probably going to have some dry rot here and there. And it all depends on how it's been stored. So I would be very careful. So I wouldn't pay much for these today. I mean, to buy it as a conversation piece and have it on the shelf, maybe like this was Cerwin-Vega's history, and just have it like that, have it like a museum piece, yeah. But to use and put in the car, I would not buy a Vega anymore. You run the risk of issues. And yes, it was the spider back then that was the problem. The voice coil was okay, the cone was okay, the outer surround was okay. So it was a spider issue with those series. Like I said, 10-inch of that didn't have it as much as the 12 and the 15. So be careful with the 12 and the 15 from the Vega series. Now that was the car audio. The other models, I wouldn't say didn't have a huge design flaw issues, but you have to be careful how you use it, because even the other series today, like the IT and the HED, and the AI or IA or whatever you want to call it, it's hard to get parts for them. So if you buy them today, just be mindful that they're hard to repair if they're fine, if something happens. Okay, let's move on to the hi-fi side of things. There's 3 models on the hi-fi side that I have chosen to highlight. There are issues with other models, but not as much as this. Those issues are more related to maybe it was a weakness combined with, if you use them hard over a long period of time, you will create a problem down the road. This, however, is a problem that came up and has come up multiple times that has to be corrected when it happens. We can start with the AT series, and for the most part, it was the AT60, the AT80, and the AT100, or AT15, 12, and 10. So, what is the problem? Well, there's no problem with the drivers. It's a cabinet. There's the problem. On the AT series, there is an early batch, there's a mid batch, and there's a late batch. The early batch, they used a glue that had some issues. On the very early batches, we can see on the early models, we can see that I had speakers that was like 4 and 5 years old come to me, 6 years old, come to me, and they had rattling noises in the cabinet, especially the front baffle. And that can be very annoying, and it has to be fixed. There's no way around it. You can't use it the way it is if that happens. So the problem was the glue. Cerwin-Vega found this out, and they changed the glue till a more flexible type, because the very first one was a fast dry, very stiff, very hard. I think it wasn't too. I think it was too fast curing, if you know what I mean. It didn't bond very well with the wood, and it created some problems. The mid batch of the AT series was better. And the way we went by this, when we came across cabinets that had rattle noises, and the cabinet was coming apart, and it was always, yeah, it was 99.9% of the time, it was the front baffle. Sometimes it was a rare baffle, but that was a very, very seldom. It was mostly the front baffle, probably because that's where the woofer is sitting and is creating that vibration and the movement back and forth. And when the glue starts to lose its grip, yeah, you're gonna get the problem. Very often do we see this, mostly on, I included the 60, but 80 and the 100 was the ones with the biggest issues, and the AT100 or the AT15 was the one with the highest frequency of baffle noise. So if you have an AT100, I can guarantee you, at one point down the road, you would have to re-glue your cabinet and maybe put in some braces. I have done it to, Jesus, 60, 80, 90, 100 cabinets, something in that order, between 60 and 100 pairs. Have we fixed cabinet rattle issues on, and 80% of those was AT100, because that was probably because that's what they sold the most of. But the later batch, and the way we see this is because we asked people, did you buy it new, when did you buy it, blah blah blah, and we kind of like made a graph of it on when people had bought the speakers, and so on and so on, because we were told that, okay, we changed the glue on this at that date and this month and this year, and then we did it again, we made it a little bit stronger, we added some hardening things and blah blah blah. So we see that there's 3 periods there, and the later period rarely have any issues, but there's a few, but not as much as the mid and the early batch of the product. So just be aware that if you have a pair of AT100 and nothing have happened yet, I can guarantee you, if you sit on it for a few more years, it's gonna happen. Is it a big job? Yeah, it's a fairly big job. Um, it's not something you can do in a hurry. And there's a few things you should do. Not everyone does it the same way. I did it in a certain way that I think was good, and that it should be done. Um, and while you're in there doing it, and you do this, and you put in some more structural support, and you make it better, and glue together and stuff like that, you will realize that you improve the sound on it too. You get a little bit of a different sound, but if in for the positive way. So just be aware of the AT series and cabinet rattles, and it's because of the glue. The glue just loses its bonding, and it's very often, 99.9% of the time, is what the heck is happening here? It's the front baffle, and then a few times it's the rear baffle, but mostly the front baffle. And you have to take all the drivers out to get to the inside, because you have to do this from the inside. And it's quite a bit of a job. It's quite a bit of a job. So don't think it's something easy. So that's the AT series. I'm just thinking if there was another model that had some issues also with rattling, and it's kind of the same thing. But there you have before and after, and it's basically the old LS series. They were so brutal. I mean, they were brutal. Though they didn't even need, like, here's the difference though. The AT series, after 5, 6, 7 years, that's when the problems started to happen on the AT series, and you see it on the ones that are 10, 15, 20. If you go back in time and we go in and see when things started happening, the LS series, however, had different issue, because here you started rattling a year after, 2 years after the speaker were brand new or sold. And some of it went on warranty, depending on the country you live in, because in some countries you have 5-year warranty, like in Norway. Any dealer or distributor has to warrant the product for 5 years, compared to like in the United States or Canada or other countries who only has 1-year warranty. So I know that we had a few issues with the LS series. However, Cerwin-Vega was, because this happened on Hi-Fi Club's watch, and Hi-Fi Club had to go in and kind of warranty do this work on this. I guess they told Cerwin-Vega that, hey, there is an issue here with the LS series, and I think there was a time in there you could see that the models that was sold after a certain date was better, and the models that was sold before a certain date had some rattling issues. I have seen or talked to people. I have repaired probably about 12 to 15 pairs of the LS for rattling cabinets, and I've talked to a bunch of people that took their, well, bunch of people, 10, 15, 20 people, that had taken their LS to have it serviced and then repaired and fixed. So LS series also had that issue, not in the long-term scope of things like the AT series, but it was a problem. And just be aware that if you buy, and I'm not sure if it was a bigger issue in Europe than over here in the United States, or if it was from state to state, because you have to think about this when you're dealing with cabinets and glues. It also depends on what kind of climate you have them in. Like, is it in a very cold? Is it in a very warm? Is it in a climate that is very humid? Or is it in a climate that is changing from cold to warm, to extreme cold to extreme warm? Are they in a home where you use a lot of wood firing things during the winter that dries out the air a lot? So there's a lot of things like that, and so you could probably see some regional differences as well. So just be aware of that the LS series, if you buy them, it was more so on the LS15. The LS12 and the LS10 also had it, but not in the same rate as the LS15. And I have a theory here, because the AT100 and LS15 was the tooth that was dominant with issues when it came to glues. And I think it's because on the 15-inch models, the wood has longer spans and longer sides, so there's more, maybe if you don't stiffen up the cabinet enough, maybe there's too much vibration over a long span compared to the 12 and 10 and others that have smaller cabinets with smaller span of the wood and corners that meet. So I think that's what it is. Maybe this could have been fixed if they had more bracing. Who knows? But just be aware that the LS and the AT series, especially the LS 15 and the AT 100, they have some rattle noise. Just be aware of that. Now the next two they're sharing an issue here, and this was a crossover issue, and it was kind of like a design flaw, this design mistake. Is the AL 750 and the AL 1000. And the reason you can see this is because they changed it. They went from the AL 750 and the AL 1000 to the new series, the MK2 version, very fast, and they did some changes on it. What happened was people are blowing tweeters like crazy blowing tweeters on both the AL 750 and the AL 1000, especially on the AL 750. It was a lot of things going on, but it was on the 1000 as well. And to begin with, they thought it was okay, this must be the tweeter that is weak. So Cerwin-Vega made up a bunch of the VST3 diaphragm and sent it out. I think I still have a chunk of it in Norway. We sat on a mountain of diaphragms for those tweeters because people were calling left and right to have those changed. There was an issue there. So they thought it was a tweeter and they troubleshoot the tweeter, but they couldn't find it where it was. And I know that the people at Hi-Fi Club was like, hey, this must be the crossover. It must be the crossover. And sure enough, it was a crossover issue. I can't remember what was the problem. I think there was it was either a cap or something that went bad, and it just wreaked havoc. There was something in that crossover that went bad. We had so much. I mean, Hi-Fi Club had it. Can you imagine being Hi-Fi Club? They were the ones who sold these new. But when I became the distributor for pro and car audio, I had the opportunity to buy out another company. When we did, we bought out everything that CMS Audio had, who was the prior pro audio dealer. But they also had a mountain of spare parts for like the MH100 and all these diaphragms, and they had a huge mountain. I don't know why, but they had a huge mountain of diaphragms for the AL 1000 and 750. Maybe because they had customer coming to them as well. So we bought out that, and I mean, when I started advertising for Cerwin-Vega repairs and sales and all that stuff, I had a hurricane of people coming to me with issues, and it was like every time it's like my tweeter is blown, my tweeter is blown, my tweeter is blown. At some point, we repaired about I don't know how many. It was crazy. And when I went solo, and in the years after, it was like I couldn't get enough VST3. So I was looking online, and I actively bought up every freaking diaphragm I could find for the LS750 and AL1000. And I did not regret doing that because it has come in handy. I tell you, there has been quite a bit of a stir for those. And I think there still is, because a lot of people, even though a lot of people address this with, at least in Norway, with Hi-Fi Club. I don't know who did it over here. I think it was like either Best Buy or some other hi-fi shops along with Cerwin-Vega directly who did it. But there's no way to say that, okay, what they did in many cases was people blew their tweeters and they put in a new diaphragm and they put in a new diaphragm. and they never corrected the crossover. So there are models out there still with the AL 750 and the AL 1000 that still has the bad crossover in there. So if you buy one and then it hasn't gone bad, it was not like every model failed, but a lot of them, a lot. If you and I think that if you look at it, it was the AL series, the first AL edition, the 750 and the 1000, not the 752 and the 1002. They are fine, but the 750 and the 1000, along with the Vega car audio, you know, they were kind of like out there at almost at the same window. When you have that much problem with different products like that, yeah, now you see what Cerwin-Vega spent a lot of resources on a couple of years, 3 years, 4 years before they had to be sold. So I think that the 750 and the 1000, along with the Vega, along with the LS, who was a few years earlier, had caused some financial strain because they had to eat a lot of this on warranty. A lot. The AL series was eating their warranty program like crazy. And I know because I repaired a lot of these tweeters. I have shipped out tons of diaphragms to people who just ordered diaphragms because they wanted to do the job themselves. It's crazy. A little type of diaphragm blows because a little part in the crossover fails. And so just be aware that when you if you buy it, make sure that first of all, have some spare diaphragms laying around. If you buy the first edition of the AL, the 750 or the 1000, you should start looking for some diaphragms just in case. I'm not saying that it will go bad, but if it hasn't been changed in the past and it hasn't been fixed and repaired in the past, you might be sitting on a little time bomb in the crossover. And at this age, it might happen anyway. So you might as well just swallow the bullet and upgrade that crossover right away. So the models you should look out for is the Stroker 12, the Vega 12 and 15, especially the AT series, the 10, the 100, the 15, or the 80 12. The 60, yeah, you can look at that one too, but they didn't have as much as the other ones. 80, AT80 and the AT100 was the one that really had a problem. The LS series, especially the 12 and the 15, more so the 15. The 12 had a few, but not as much as the 15-inch. And then, of course, the AL750 and the AL1000. So now you know who the problem child was. I mean, there's other models with issues and problems, but not in... Maybe one or two pairs has an issue because there was a production weakness or there was a little, there might be a... Every now and then, every product has there's like a 8% fallback or claim or repair. Every product has some repair claims. But when it becomes like 25%, 30%, 40% of the total sales, then you have a problem, and that's become an issue. And that's what these models had, especially the LS, the AL, and the Vega. It was like huge amount of the total sales that had issues very early on. Almost AL1000 and AL750 had problems from day one. So you didn't have to wait long for things to start happening when you bought an AL. The other ones was kind of like drawn out a little bit of time, but it still was an issue like the LS series, like I told about, because depending on where you live, if you had a 5-year warranty, you could get it on the warranty because it happened like a year or 2.5 years later. So I saw one pair of LS15 that came back. I was there when it happened. He brought him in. I was there doing some stuff with the Hyperklubben. I forgot about the name. And I was there when he came in and said, "Hey, I bought these. It was 6 months ago, and I have a rattling noise. It's almost like the cabinet's coming apart. Sure enough, 6 months after they were new, they had rattling. So that was probably the most extreme one that I have seen on the LS. But a year and a half, 2 years, 2.5 years was not unheard of, and it happened quite a bit. So, of course, a lot of this was fixed locally at Hi-Fi Klubben because they had a service center and they fixed things. I mean, they built speakers, so they know how to do it. But in certain cases where I went to a party one time, and he had a LS15 in his basement, what we call peisestue in Norway. And so we had a party. We were sitting down there. It was like 8 or 9 of us. We were doing a little vorspiel before we was going out, and we were playing pretty loud. And all of a sudden, the whole freaking thing started rattling, and it was so bad that the front baffle. This is the front baffle. Here's the woofer, the mid and the tweeter, and you're sitting there and you're looking at it, and it was playing. And the baffle just disappeared into the cabinet while playing. It was nuts. We were sitting there going like, what the hell just happened? That was the LS15. If that was because of the bad glue, we don't know. Or if it was spotty glue. That have happened a couple of times. I have seen, and that can be because of when they make these models, a lot of the glue is done with machines. If the glue bag or the glue container gets air in it, or the hose gets air in it, or it gets low on glue, you can get air, and it goes like, it goes like, like that. So you have spotty glued. Maybe that was happened. Because I've seen that too, where there's like 2 inches of glue, 6 inches of no glue, 4 inches of glue, and no glue, and glue, and no glue. So I've seen that on cabinets. So that might have been the problem here. But it was fun. He was sitting there and playing pretty loud. He was playing CC Cowboys and Harry, I think it was, it's a very party song in Norway, Harry. And I was sitting there playing it loud, and all of a sudden you see the baffle just disappeared into the cabinet. It was the funniest shit I ever seen. So, well, that was it, guys. I am not going to blab around anymore about that, but I just wanted to give you guys a little, okay, here are some issues with some models. So if you're out looking for them, just be aware. Keep in mind that you might have some issues with them, and when they come along, they can be taken care of. However, the diaphragm, if you need diaphragm, the physical fixing of gluing and stuff, I'm not saying it's easy, because it's a big job and you have to know what you're doing, but that's doable. It's very doable. No problem there. You can go out and get very good glue. You add some stiffness to it, you brace it, and you add some bracing to it, and you should be good to go. However, there is like the Vega 12 and the 15. If something goes wrong there's no coming back from that. The stroker can be fixed. You have recon kits for it, so that's not a problem. But the Vega 12 and the 15, be very careful what you do. And when it comes to the AL 750 and the AL 1000, they can be fixed, because if there's woofers and mids and stuff like that. But if the mids go, because it wasn't just tweeters that went, sometimes the mid went too, but it was mostly tweeters. But if the tweeter gets crushed or blown up or whatever happens, just make sure that you can get the diaphragm, and the name of the diaphragm is VST-3. That's the diaphragm for some of these models here. And so you just have to make sure that you can get your hands on them, or else you're going to have a problem. You have to go with some aftermarket tweeters, and who want to do that? Until next time, guys, take care.